My mother, Augustina, who's sitting over there with my sister, was the first person to come to America by herself and is very tenacious. She doesn't take no for an answer. She never gives up. And thank God she's 88 and a 3-time cancer survivor. So I think that tells you everything you need to know about me. English was not my first language. When I started school, this created many obstacles for me. I was blessed to have great teachers who cared and took an interest in my development and my well-being. Through my hard work and stubbornness, I was able to succeed both academically and athletically. I was able to be in honors and AP classes. I played football in high school and in college, and I was class president for 4 years straight. I attended SUNY Albany and graduated with honors from the business school. I got a job at Ernst & Young, and I passed the CPA exam. This experience has gave me a broad perspective on learning and also played a big role in my initial reason for running for the school board. The power of education is priceless. Having over 30 years of financial accounting experience and being a CFO has been a tremendous asset to helping me be an effective leader on the board. Being an auditor has allowed me to be able to ask tough questions without being embarrassed. In turn, the district has saved substantial dollars on many construction initiatives, including the ballistic doors, the 501c3. But what I'm most proud of is navigating the school district through the COVID pandemic. We quickly implemented safety protocol to protect all our children, teachers, and staff, upgraded various educational technologies, hired personnel, and assisted in asynchronous learning. To help our children cope with the stress factors, we hired additional mental health professionals and set up a diversity and inclusivity task force. Now that we have passed the pandemic, it's time to get back to normal, build on our successes, re-elect me to ensure stability in our leadership, and allow me to continue the work that I've done at the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ruotolo. Mr. Cousins, we'd hear from you now, your opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and thank you to our host, the Syosset Council of PTAs, and of course the Nassau Region PTA for helping making this possible.
Thank you.
I also want to extend warm wishes to Lynn Abramson's family. Lynn is someone I know personally. Lynn is a good woman. She's a good citizen. She cares, and we hope to see her, Godspeed, on the campaign trail in full health as soon as she's able. It's also appropriate that we have our event tonight. We're in the midst of Teacher Appreciation Week as we're celebrating throughout all of our schools. And we give thanks to our teachers as always. And like Tom, and I'm sure just like the other gentleman here, you know, we all share love of our family, and I'm grateful, of course, to my wife, Karen, and my son, Andrew, that without them, without their support, I wouldn't be able to be up here tonight, and I would certainly not have been able to achieve anything really of much substance in my life without them either. To introduce myself, I am Court Cousins. I've been a resident for many years here in the district. My son is a 5th grade in Village Elementary School. I am a commercial lawyer by trade. I work inside of a large global company supporting certain lines of business. And the most important thing that I do really at work is finding solutions to problems, but not just finding solutions, but executing on them. It's delivering things. And it's working with different people with different backgrounds, people from different countries, people that look and sound differently than I do. And it's not just because it is an idea that any one person considered great, it's because we live in a world of differences. And in the workplace, just like in school, we have to work together. We have common goals, and it's always important that we join to be able to succeed individually and as a group. One thing that I would like to highlight, even though we're going to talk about a whole range of different things tonight with the questions and answers, is I want to highlight the importance of parental involvement. For almost a couple of years now, our parents have been sitting on the sidelines, wanting to be more involved in school. And while the Syosset School District has done a magnificent job in staying open through the pandemic and having the classroom open to our children, the time has come for parents to be back involved and have access to our buildings to the full extent the same way that our staff and our children do. And again, not just because it's something that sounds like a good idea, but it's a bit of an imperative. Children with parental involvement do better. And it's not just that parents have the right to be there and close to their children. Of course they do. But more than just maybe some legal sense of why they should be there or a legal right, there's a moral sense of why they should be there. No one knows our children better than we as their parents do. We have a role to play. We should be involved in decision making. And we are not there to make every decision. We delegate that to the schools to a large extent. But we need to be heard from, and decisions should be informed by what we share and what we think. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cousins. If I should mispronounce your name, please correct me. And Mr. Guo, is that correct, sir? That's correct. Okay, we'll hear from you now, Mr. Guo. Thank you.
You pronounce it perfectly.
Okay, we're ready to, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, we're ready to hear from you now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for organizing tonight's forum. My name is Jason Guo. I am a 12-year Syosset resident. I have been working as an IT director and engineer for 25 years. I co-founded 501c3 organization, YOCODA, that is a United Community Oriented Development Association, with its mission to help disadvantaged group and develop a harmonious community. YOCODA donated 50,000 worth of COVID-19 supplies during the pandemic. I have 3 children in Syosset schools. One is in Robbins Lane, one is in HBT, and one is in high school, respectively. I believe in maximum parental choice under the law, advocacy without worry, curriculum oversight, financial responsibility, and academic excellence. I was born in a third world country where election like this is not possible to happen. I migrated here for American dream. But this dream will not come true unless all of us fight to protect our right as parents and as residents. I witnessed the countries that use pandemic as reason to physically lock people down at their home using metal fence. I also witnessed the New York State executive branch to want to make their emergency regulation to become permanent regulation. This corroded the right of us as parents. I also witnessed our residents and parents fear to speak up. Once elected, I will work with the board to establish policy to maximize parental choice under the law and also create an open environment where everyone free to speak. For this reason, I also create a website that's jasonforsyosset.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guo. And now we're happy to hear from Dr. Rico. Okay. Pass the mic. Can you turn it on? Yeah, there we go.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay, perfect. So again, my name is Steve Rico. Thank you to everybody who made this event possible. For the other candidates that are up here who are choosing to throw their hats in the arena and step up for our children. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a 14-year resident of Syosset. I'm a husband first, a father of 4 children. I have a daughter in high school, 2 boys in middle school, and another daughter who's in elementary school. I left for college at 17 years old on a full Division I athletic scholarship. I was a captain of my program there. I ran in the NFL Combines. When I completed college, I graduated with honors, had turned down a bid to medical school at that point to pursue a career in business. I worked for the pharmaceutical industry as well as Wall Street before deciding to go back to dental school. At that point, I graduated from Stony Brook Dental School. I was accepted to the #1 residency program at the time in the country. Since completing that, I've purchased multiple dental practices, which I still to this day own and operate. I've been on several medical mission trips overseas to third world countries. I think a lot of people don't really appreciate how lucky we are to be in this community, to be in this country. Until you've seen what real poverty looks like, you don't realize how blessed we all are to be here, to have an opinion, to see a government that hopefully functions better than it has been over the last few years. But I was blessed to be there. My wife and I also own and operate several other businesses outside of my dental practices. But what I can bring to the board is an understanding of infection control, infectious disease. I chose to keep my offices open throughout the entire pandemic to treat the community, which I practice in, to take care of patients who were in need, who had emergencies, who were in pain. I did not close down to try to hide and just protect myself. I put myself at risk while taking all the proper protocols that we possibly could to make sure that everybody was safe, my staff was safe, and that our patients were taken care of who needed us. I have a lot of experience when it comes to managing money, functioning within a budget, bringing people together, surrounding myself with great people, listening to all sides, all perspectives, but then ultimately making the decisions that need to be made that may be hard decisions, and then bringing people together toward a common goal. One thing that I stand really strongly with is parental choice. I have not been happy with what I've seen over the last few years in the school district. I feel a lot of choices have been taken away from us and just dictated to us and how we should feel. I'm very passionate about it. I think the schools should be open. Our families, our parents, our grandparents should all be involved. I think our kids do better when everybody else is involved in their education. And I plan on doing everything I can to stand up for those people's rights, for parents' rights. And that's what you'll get if you elect me to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rico. And last but not least, for opening statements is Mr. Ostrick.
Thank you all for coming, and to those listening at home. Forums like these that help people make informed decisions are critical for civic engagement and good citizenship, so I really appreciate everyone's participation tonight. As long as I can remember, I've always been drawn to public service. I'm intensely sensitive to and motivated by the ideas of fairness and a desire to raise my hand and help out. In the fall of '96, I was a 22-year-old sitting through a brown bag lunch at grad school where I was studying public policy. During that lunch, a high-ranking staffer for a senator came in and started to dazzle the room with sickening tales of how things really work in Washington, D.C. After 20 minutes, I remember raising my hand and asking tentatively, "At what point does good policy enter this discussion?" And he looked at me and said, "Son, you just don't understand the game." Turned off by national government, I didn't go to Washington but went to work in finance instead. I always knew that I would keep looking for a way to make a difference, but Washington, D.C. would not be the place. Early in my career, I kept one foot in the public service door by keeping up with my classmates who were in government around the world, but the demands of finance jobs in New York City didn't allow me to do both. Fast forward a few years and I was married to Karen, who is also dedicated to service, as many of you know. In 2009, we decided to move back to Long Island, and like many of you, we asked ourselves, where are the best schools? In no time at all, Karen was well established in our PTAs. A little bit later, as I became more senior at my job and was given the luxury of some free time, I was beginning to find my way back to service. 7 years ago, the soccer coordinator sent an email asking if anyone on our team would be willing to coach because we didn't have one. So I thought I could help, and I raised my hand. A few years after that, at a school board meeting, someone on the dais mentioned that there was a Citizens Advisory Committee on Finance, and it was a little light on membership, and did anyone know anything about finance and maybe participate? I knew about finance, so I raised my hand again. Karen and I looked around and saw how sparsely some of the school board meetings were being attended and thought, well, this isn't fair. Someone who's home with young kids but can't attend really needs to know this stuff. So Karen and I mostly Karen, took out our phones, raised our hands, and started live streaming those Board of Ed meetings. And just in time, too, thankfully, because when the pandemic hit, they sure proved helpful. Our local civic association president, he was overcommitted and said he could use some help. It would give you an opportunity to interact with lots of other parts of government, if anyone's willing to raise their hand and help out. I raised my hand again. Luckily for me, last December, my company went through a restructuring and my new compliance department came to a conclusion that volunteering was no longer a risk to the firm. As a 22-year-old, I knew I wasn't meant to be in Washington because I cared too intensely to play games with people's lives. Instead, I was meant to find a place locally where I could see an impact on kids and their families directly. Coaching, helping neighbors, serving on the school board. I hope you'll give me a chance to raise my hand one more time. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move now into the portion where we're going to begin asking the questions. Again, just make sure, please, that you speak up, speak clearly so that everyone can hear your responses. Just make sure you're speaking into the mic so your voice is projecting. Okay? Okay, Pat, are we ready? And for the responses, we're going to limit your response to a minute. 1 minute, you'll have to respond to each question. Is that fair? Okay. All right, Mr. Cousins, we're going to begin with you for the first question. And again, candidates, I will read the question. When I get to you, if you need me to repeat it, I will. What areas do you see as the greatest strengths for the district, and which areas do you see as the greatest areas for improvement?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Greatest strengths right out of the gate, we know, are the academics. It's probably the biggest reason that most of us have chosen to live here. As well, the performing arts, and I think to a lesser extent, despite myself being a sports parent, I think the sports as well. When it comes to areas of improvement, on the one hand, all large organizations are going to have some measure of inefficiency. It's just simply a part of the human condition. And bringing in a skill set such as mine, or complementary skill sets such as my running mates Jack or Tom, we can find those inefficiencies, ways to save money, ways to find alternative sources of revenue, and these are subjects that we'll get to talk about with my running mates as we go through the Q&A period. But to focus on some suggestions where we can have some improvement, students who are not necessarily at one end of the spectrum where they're looking for additional services, or those that may be at the overperforming end, where there are many options available to them, but those students who are in the middle. We don't want them to be forgotten, nor do we want students that may pursue alternative paths, such as through BOCES and through the professional trades. Those are areas that we can work on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cousins. Mr. Guo, do you need me to repeat the question, or are you good?
I'm good.
Okay.
My answer to this question is the Syosset schools advantage is the academic, sports, and music. We did a great job and continue doing the good job. In terms of areas that needs to improvement, that's the communication. I think we have an environment that many people are fear to have in the fear to speak up. So for this, that's one of the important reasons that I'm running for the school board is once I'm elected, I will try to establish an environment where everybody speak freely, peacefully, respectfully. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Rico?
Well, I think I agree with my other running mates that obviously I think almost all of us have moved to this community for academics first and foremost. I think a lot of the extracurricular clubs that we have available for our students is a great asset. It's almost like running a small college when the kids go to high school in this school district. I think as far as a couple things that could be improved upon, I think we all know if we could find a way to upgrade our athletic fields in a fiscally responsible way, that would be something we would greatly benefit. And just with regards to the last couple of years, I think we need to do a better job, as my friend here just said, about basically having more open communication, a little bit more transparency, not being dictated how we should feel and be a little bit more comfortable accepting each other and working together and understanding that we're all different. We all have different reasons for making the choices that we make for our own families. It's not something that should be dictated to us by the district or the people in charge. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Ostrich?
Sure, thank you. So I think we're all in agreement that the academics here are outstanding, along with the way our sports team perform and our arts programs. Something that I think that we can utilize more and that's outstanding in our district too are our parents. A lot of folks have spoken about parents' choice and parent involvement. There is a wealth of knowledge, expertise, excellence, dedication, and love in this community for helping make better decisions, more informed decisions, more activities where parents can be in the school and reconnecting with the building. That activity is critical to the development for our children and for getting them, some of them who have a little bit off the path because of COVID, right back where we want them. That's both an opportunity and a source for improvement for us, and I agree with you. The other thing that we could really use is some improvement to our facilities, whether they're athletic facilities or the buildings, and there are a lot of ways that we can go about doing that in an intelligent way, and we can talk about that later.
Thank you. Mr. Rotolo?
Sure, can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. What areas do you see as the greatest strengths for the district, and which areas do you see as the greatest areas for improvement?
Okay. So being on the board and having the opportunity to look under the hood, what I can tell you is I think our greatest strength is our people, is our teachers, our superintendent, all our parents, our community. That's what makes this place a very special place. The academics, but this is a people business. We have 6,800 children in our district. We have hundreds of teachers, so that's what makes it. When you sit there and you see a teacher teach somebody to read, that's the magic. That's what makes Syosset special, because people care. And I saw it throughout COVID. The teachers, everybody in the district, the security people, the custodians, everybody here cares. Up and down the ladder, that's the importance, that's the strength of Syosset. Things that we can improve on in Syosset is we want to educate all of the students, and we want to make sure that we don't just educate them, but then we teach them life lessons. How do we teach them to be critical thinkers? Thank you. Sorry.
No, I do. Thank you. So I apologize, Maria and Christine. I'm going to have to make an amendment here. The questions, I'm finding that the responses, 1 minute is coming very quickly. And so, Pat, we're going to adjust the time. I did double check to make sure that I could do that. But I'm just going to allow up to 2 minutes to respond to each question. 1 minute is really kind of fast. So you have up to 2 minutes. You may not use the full 2 minutes, as your discretion is fine, but you will have at least 2 minutes to respond, okay? So timekeeper, please just adjust the time. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move to our second question, and again, you'll have 2 minutes to respond. And for the second question, we're going to begin with Mr. Guo. Here is the question. Our community, mirroring the country, can be deeply divided on many issues. As a board trustee, how would you put your personal views to the side to be able to act on behalf of the entire community?
This is a great question. Everybody have their own opinion, and being on the board, it's not a matter of your personal opinion. It's going to be a consensus. So whenever there's a decision made, the responsibility for the board is to approve or disapprove a policy or curriculum or like a budget coming from the administration, which could be the finance management or the superintendent. So I will represent a part of voice, same as the rest of the 8 board members representing their part of the voice. and then we do a vote for, say, approve or disapprove a certain policy. So for that reason, I'm thinking that I will put my vote with the opinion that with the people that I think have the same opinion with me on the board as part of the board. So as long as we have a majority vote, that means this policy is going to be passed because you got a five out of 9 votes. So that's my response to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Rico?
Would you mind repeating that question one more time?
Sure. Our community, mirroring the country, can be deeply divided on many issues. As a board trustee, how would you put your personal views to the side to be able to act on behalf of the entire community?
Well, I think first and foremost, I think everybody needs to understand that we operate within a democracy. And what makes us strong is listening to all sides, having different opinions, having people from different backgrounds, and then working together. We are, as a country, a complete melting pot, and Syosset is just one little microcosm of what we represent as Americans. I think what I do really well is surrounding myself with great people, gathering all the information, then sifting through it, getting educated, and seeking out education on the points that I think I need to do a better job of learning, and then making decisions that are best for everybody, so everybody benefits. And then we put it to a vote, and we see what happens from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ostrich?
So I think you can think about this in 2 parts, right? The first is the role of me as an individual trustee and how I can be part of a collective decision-making opportunity. How do I gather input? What facts dictate the relevant analysis for a particular policy issue? How do different stakeholders come forward and speak their minds to make sure that they're heard both individually by me and by the board? How to work collectively in a room full of people with different opinions? I view this almost technocratically in the sense that what my personal opinion is often influenced by the facts I have in front of me. I have the mental flexibility and willingness to change my point of view depending on what comes in front of me. So I'm not walking in with the firmest opinion on pieces of information or policies where I don't have a ton of background or detailed thought processes. So being open to new pieces of information and thought is critical, I think, from an individual trustee point of view. From the point of view of the board as a whole, I think of the board as a fulcrum, balancing the interests of a lot of different groups in the school district, because there are a lot of folks in this district: teachers, staff, administrators, parents, children, folks in the district who have no kids, et cetera, et cetera. And all of those stakeholders in the decision-making process, weighing their particular interests, is not really particularly related to my personal opinion. Policies that impact our children should be dominated by facts, not by whether or not I think something in terms of sort of based on incomplete information. So that's really the way I would approach it.
Thank you. Mr. Rotolo?
Thank you. So I agree with Jack, but being on the board, I've been on the board for 3 years, and what I think one of the most important things to do is, sounds simple, but you have to have respect for the other board members. You have to listen to the other board members. Again, like I had said before, this is a people thing. You're dealing with people. When we're on the board, there's a lot of constraints. You have the New York State Ed law, you have contracts that are in place, but what's worked is you listen, you're open-minded, you build relationships with people. And that's how we've gotten aboard, not our individual things, but what is best for the community. We are just one of 9. The board's power only comes from the unity of the board. And if you make a decision and you don't agree, you have to stick with it because, again, that's the respect for democracy. That's the respect for this rule of law. That's why it works. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And Mr. Cousins?
Sure. Thank you, madam. Could I ask you to repeat the question?
Sure. Our community, mirroring the country, can be deeply divided on many issues. As a board trustee, how would you put your personal views to the side to be able to act on behalf of the entire community?
At bottom, I don't know that any of us can always put our personal views completely to the side. We may compartmentalize them to some extent, but we're all going to be informed by our own personal experiences and our views, and that's an important thing to bring to the table. But if we're going to be sitting on a board of 9, publicly elected, we're also going to be expected to represent the views of the other stakeholders, not just the voters, but as some of the other candidates have accurately mentioned. It could be the kids themselves, it could be parents, and of course, the staff. Now, the difference maker is the personal skill set that I'm going to bring into the boardroom. The ability to listen, which we've heard others say, and I completely agree, but also coming in with the power to persuade. When I go to work, whether it's a presentation to people I report to or to peers, there's always going to be a measure of persuasion, being organized, thinking critically, getting my facts together, and that comes from being prepared, trying to research. But as we've all mentioned so far, also listening to others. That, along with our own personal views, is going to inform what our decision making is. It's also going to inform how well we might be able to persuade others. A good idea may not be so hard to sell. That may be a way that, yes, we can sort of move the ball down the field. But if we're going to try to do things that might just be unpopular or only serve the needs of some at the expense of others, that's going to be difficult to do no matter what anyone's preferences are. Corporate boards, charitable boards, a board of education. This is a group of people that, as Tom mentioned, are powerful when they work together as a unit. So what I bring into the table, again, is the ability to listen, the ability to think critically, but also the ability to come in prepared to try and persuade others as to what a good outcome may be. Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Dr. Rico, we're going to begin this next question with you. The question is, what areas do you believe should change or improve in this school district for students with special needs?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
What areas do you believe should change or improve in this school district for students with special needs?
Well, I think it's important to make sure that we have programs available, IEP programs, things that can help children who have specific needs to help them succeed. I think having a lot of the different extracurricular activities that find alternatives to them while making sure that it's important for them to learn in their core classes as well. I think finding other areas where kids can thrive, find out what they're good at, what they love, what they excel at, so that they can be successful in life is extremely important. Having the emotional support, social and emotional support of their families, the school's open for people to come in and help support them in other ways. But I think it's definitely important that we realize not all kids fit into a box, not everybody excels in a chemistry class, and that it's important that we have the support that's necessary so all of our kids thrive. No matter what their background is, we have to find other ways, alternatives to make them feel good about themselves and give them opportunities to be successful in life.
Thank you. Mr. Ostrick?
So I really have two general areas of thought about this. First, in the last few years, our special ed kids have really been, and I can testify to this observationally firsthand, have really been impacted by the setbacks in some of their social emotional development. So wearing masks, being isolated and separated, and not having the play groups, not being able to interact with students in the last few years have really set some of these kids behind. There is a little bit of a shortage of resource when it comes to creating play groups, getting those kids functionally assessed, continuing to see these children develop on grade and on plan to catch up. That's a personal emphasis for me if I'm on the school board. It's something that's really key for my personal something that I'm close to personally. The second thing I think that we really need to do, and there's a big opportunity here, is our parents of special needs kids, when we talk about involvement in decisions and getting parents back in the building and even more involved in their children's lives, there has been, for whatever reason, I think a little bit of a shortcoming in the communication that we're able to give to our special needs parents about their rights, about the opportunities that they have for programming, and about how the district has resources and programs to support their children directly. That's, again, something that's a significant priority for me, and it's something that I think a lot about. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. Mr. Rotolo?
Thank you. This is also very near and dear to my heart. Not only did I have a language problem, but I also had a learning disability. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, what was very difficult was because I felt out of the group. I was always in a special class. I got pulled out. Why don't you take Italian? You speak Italian. Now I have to go to remedial learning. I can't take that language. So from my point of view, what I found was tough was the acceptance and being made fun of. One of the things that happened during the pandemic was when we started doing the remote learning, I had brought up to our board members that, okay, we have the kids that are taking AP classes, but what about the kids with special needs? How are they gonna adjust to this? This is gonna be very, very difficult for them. And to the wisdom and the courage of our superintendent and our board, we doubled the asynchronous learning. We bought computers, we bought video cameras, and I told the teachers, I said, I don't expect you to know these computer programs or any of the new stuff. What I want you to do is I want you to push the button and I want you to communicate with the kids, and I want you to tell the kids that they're important and everything is going to be all right. And that's what the school district did.
Thank you. Mr. Cousins?
Historically, the Syosset School District has had, compared to many of its peers, a very good track record in providing services and assistance to students with special needs. And that, of course, doesn't mean that, we rest on our laurels and there's not room for improvement. There's always room for improvement. One of the challenges, of course, is just that, the needs can be very individualized from student to student. In the past year, I had the privilege to be PTA president of my son's elementary school. And while, I and our team, had accomplished a lot, speaking personally, I learned a great deal. And one of the things that I got to learn more about was SEPTA, which is the association within the school district for parents who have children with special needs. And that learning was not just understanding, their advocacy and what their experiences were like, but as, other candidates have mentioned, and I agree, when it comes to parental engagement, here is a particularly good example. Because while all of us as parents are going to advocate for our children, from time to time, but children with special needs may require more advocacy. Their parents know their children's situation undoubtedly better than any of the rest of us will. We, of course, are there to support them, certainly as part of the PTA, but as a district, it is constantly maintaining the resources that they need. Tom had talked about some technological resources. Others had mentioned the emotional support, because we want all of our students, including our special needs students, to have the same chance at success. Ultimately, though, it's communication with those parents. If there's any place we can improve, let's always have our ear to the ground to listen to everything they have to say and use that as our guidepost to the things that we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this time, I just want to ask the audience members to please silence your cell phones, to make sure that all cell phones are on silent. Thank you. Mr. Guo?
Let me answer the question this way. So basically, during the COVID-19, the students, not only the regular students being hit, the students with special needs gets hit harder. And I want to thank for the special needs PTA, the SE PTA did a lot of great jobs for helping those parents and the students. My vision for this is we could establish a more systematically a way of communication feedback, such as email, special committee, and then regular communications, so that we can listen to those special needs more frequently, same as we listen to every other channel. And to me, when there is a special needs, it is less likely to express than other parents. So for that reason, we need to need to spend more effort to try to get their voice, to collect their opinions in order to adjust the school programs better fit their needs. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to begin our next question, and Mr. Ostrick, we're going to begin with you, sir. How important are the arts to you in terms of funding, facilities, and the overall education of the whole child?
Could you ask me again?
How important are the arts to you in terms of funding, facilities, and the overall education of the whole child?
So, I was a music kid. My wife is an artist. My oldest son doesn't have either of them in as much in as large a dose as I'd prefer, but my younger one certainly does. Getting them a well-rounded education, including the arts, whether it be music or painting or drawing or whatever creative venue that they want to pursue, is important to me. I remember talking to the principal of our school, basically, who said that they were having trouble sourcing locations for our students to be able to do our artistic program. That's not acceptable. We've got to figure out a way to introduce everybody, whether or not it's easy. There has got to be things that we can do to make sure that all the students are getting that full breadth of education, my non-artist included. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Rotolo?
Can you please repeat the question again?
Sure.
Thank you.
How important are the arts to you in terms of funding, facilities, and the overall education of the whole child?
Okay, thank you. So it's very important to me, the arts. As you had brought up, educating the whole child is very important. And I think every child, if they're good at sports, if they're good at art, if they're good at music, that is something that they're going to have a passion for. That's something that's going to build their confidence. Especially here at Syosset, we have an unbelievable arts and music program. When they come and perform, it's amazing. There's magic when you see that. That gives our children wings. That gives our children the ability to believe that if they can play an instrument, if they could do art, if they could do a sport, they could do anything. So I think that carries over into the rest of their confidence, their ability. So I believe it's very important. I believe our facilities are important. Anything we could do to foster that, I am for. Obviously financially responsible. One of the main things that the board has set up is a 501c3, which is a non-for-profit entity that can help fund something like the arts, something like the theater. And also the beauty of it is that it's going to alleviate some of the tax burden on the taxpayers. So as Jack had said before, every decision that we make is like a fulcrum because we're trying to balance everybody's needs and come up with the best solution within a budget. This is like your household. We have to keep an eye on everything. So yes, it's very important to me.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cousins?
The arts are a priority. My son, whose key extracurricular activities, for a fifth grader, aside from, the video games we always try to get him off of, he plays the trumpet. He plays a few different sports. So he also is very good with visual arts, with painting and drawing. Skills, he certainly didn't get from me, at least the art part he didn't get from me. But it's something that, seemingly is very different from some of his other interests. But what my wife and I have learned is that, when you think of the whole child, it's not just necessarily finding things that he's good at. We don't want to think of his education as like a completely business-like experience. He's an individual person just like everyone else's child is. And art is a place where he experiments a little bit. He tried an instrument because he thought it looked interesting, and he's learning to like it. Part of that love of it is because he happens to have, an exceptional music teacher that is making it fun. But he also has an exceptional art teacher. Now, as he gets older, his interests may change. But when we see the look in his eyes, though, and the pride when his work has been displayed, with other students, maybe on the wall at school when, people walk in, and it's a difference maker in his life. But what I realize is that it's not just picking and choosing for our kids or for anyone else's kids, what their extracurricular activities are going to be. But when we have the arts available to them, just like with sports or other things, it provides an opportunity for them, again, not to just find something that they're good at, but maybe to find something they want to learn or something that just calls them. And when they get to be involved with that and we get to nurture that and make that investment, yes, that builds their self-esteem, and yes, that will in turn build lifelong skills that are going to help them find success, which is, of course, the ultimate goal, of why we have them here getting an education. But they're not going to get a complete experience, and I don't see how they would be a complete child without at least having the opportunity to sample the arts and, learn an appreciation of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Guo?
I think the question is about how art is important to you in terms of funding, facility, overall education of a child. So my answer to that is art is, for a child, is a person's base. It's his base character. So anything he do excel will be the art and music ability will be part of his basic character. So Syosset has did a great job in terms of art education, and also I love the shows, and my kids are in the show. My kids, each of them taking the music, taking the band and the orchestra. I like the school organize the reflection every year. That's also a great program. I think one of the reasons that Syosset academically are so advanced is because we have the art and the music education are so great at it. So in terms of funding or facility improvement, if there's something necessary, we can certainly, as a whole, look into specific things, see if there's things needs to be improved. Obviously, will be coming into a part of the budget, and that's my response. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Rico?
Well, I think first and foremost, like the other candidates have already said, I think the arts, music, any extracurricular activity is really about building a well-rounded person, finding out what kids' interests are. And like I said earlier, not all kids thrive only in a classroom. To be honest, I never had any art or music talent, but I could remember as early as elementary school, my brother is a phenomenal musician. He's been in multiple bands, still is playing music to this day. Grew up wanting to be Nikki Sixx and Motley Crue. And I listened to him learn to play the bass from the time I was probably 5 years old, and that is the absolute worst instrument to listen to somebody learn to play. But he turned into an incredible musician, all right? I also watch my wife, who is incredibly creative and talented, and she's always drawing, photographing, everything, sketching, and she uses that as a form of meditation, a way of being creative. So for me, it really hits home, even though it's not something that's in my specific talents. But in any way that we could help fund any child to find something that they love, something they're passionate about, I'm 100% on board. Obviously, as long as we can do academics come first, and we need to find a way to do all of these things in a fiscally responsible way, I would love to support any kid and whatever their passions may be to help them become successful and well-rounded adults. There's a lot of ways to be successful in life outside of just the classroom. And the arts are important for all of that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Rotolo, we're going to start with a new question, and we're going to begin with you, sir. So this is a two-part question. Do you agree the high school should have a later start time? If so, what are your views on how this can be accomplished?
Okay, thank you. So, since I'm an accountant, since I kind of work with data, and the way we look at problems on the board is that we have to get all the information. Now, all the information also has to come from all of the pertinent stakeholders. So that's the parents, that's the teachers, everybody that's going to be affected. So obviously there's benefits to mental wellness, and that's one of the, again, items that we're pushing to educate the whole child. So we're not just concerned about, are they doing good in school, how's their mental health, how's their physical health. So the way I view these decisions is, what's the information? I want to be transparent. I want to get everybody's feedback. Obviously, people have schedules that are set, so we have to weigh the cost benefit of making these decisions. The best thing we could do is, we're going to do a survey and get everyone's feedback on the survey. We're going to have open forums where people can come and ask questions. So that's the way we make decisions here. And again, I will use the fulcrum. I think it's a great analogy, but we have to balance all interests. If it makes sense, we'll discuss it as a board and we'll consider it. If it doesn't, then we don't do it. But that's kind of our thought process. We don't just make decisions willy-nilly. We work hard at them. We try to get everybody's input. We want to hear everybody. And then we'll make a decision. This is what a community is. This is what we do. We kind of all come together and make a decision that's best for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat, as you show the candidates the time, please just remember to flash my way a minute. Sometimes I'm not seeing where we are. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Cousins?
I think Tom touched on the first point that's critical, which is getting involved all the relevant stakeholders. Part of this is polling the public, not just because we're trying to stick our finger in the wind and decide what the popular move is, but we need to understand what the particular needs are. Do most high school students and families want a later start time? How much later do they want it to be? Then, just like I might in the workplace or with my PTA, that we need to sit down and start to evaluate all of the different things that can be affected by a decision that doesn't just happen in a vacuum. For example, I've had the opportunity to talk to a variety of people in my neighborhood and other neighborhoods to get some of their initial thoughts on this. And for high school students, for example, a later start time could have the unintended effect of disrupting when students then become available, let's say, for sports, when they may have competitions against other schools. Because within divisions or throughout the county, as schedules are developed, they're trying to align, the end of school days for the various schools, so there comes a point that transportation and locations can be arranged. The same may hold true with performing arts. The same also may hold true as there is a concern for parents whose kids are involved with BOCES and perhaps pursuing a trade. As I understand it, there are students who may, early in the school day, need transportation to be involved with those kinds of programs, and an alteration of the school day may require an accommodation to be able to make that work. When speaking, for example, to elementary school parents, if their school day was then to say move earlier and students would be dismissed it even earlier, that may create a childcare issue in a home where there may be only one parent, or there may be two parents, but they're working and they're not working from home. So it's premature to say whether I can support it because we don't fully understand the need or what everyone would like to be done. But if we can gather all that information, then as a group we can make some kind of informed decision and see if there is a compromise that can be had and we can solve for the actual problem.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Guo?
Regarding the school late start time, this has been a topic since at least 4 years ago, while my first son is in middle school, and now he's in high school. We are still talking about this topic, and I have been listening to both sides of the conversation. Many parents communicated for supporting the late start because of the children can have a longer sleep time. However, there's also parents who is in like in a schedule or in a sports would like to keep the current schedule. So my thought is we need to do some kind of quantifiable measurement of survey is one part of it, and then how we compose, how we analyze the survey data. For example, how many, not only the number of parents who participate in the survey, but also the likelihood of this survey representing the percentage of the population, and also the actual impact for the person who supporting the late start. The impact is they say have a longer sleep, and on the other side the impact is the overall schedule. So this needs to be a methodic consolidated information to be all considered together to be a final decision by the superintendent and by the board. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Rico?
Well, I think first and foremost, the children come first, and I think we're all in agreement about that. It seems that the medical research at least supports that a later start time is definitely advantageous for high school students and for our teenagers. I'm sure my 15-year-old would love to sleep in a little bit longer before coming to school. But like everybody else has already mentioned, there's obviously a lot of logistical issues that need to be addressed before that could even be an option. First and foremost, obviously, is parent schedules, whether or not they can make the changes that are necessary to make that happen for their children. Very important is the busing schedules. Right now we have a shortage of bus drivers, it seems, to get the kids to and from anywhere. So how do you do that without moving either the elementary school start time back or the middle school or both? I love the idea of surveys and potentially polling parents, but I fear that you're always going to have people on both sides of that spectrum. It's going to work for some families and not for others. So I think we just have to run through some different scenarios, see if there's a way that we can make that work, make a compromise that benefits everybody. If we can push the high school start times back, I think that's great, but someone would have to show how to do that without affecting after-school sports, after-school clubs, extracurricular activities, so that the kids can do the other things that are part of making them who they are and well-rounded. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ostrich?
So this question about my feelings about it really harkens back to that earlier question we had, which is how I put my personal feelings in or aside from decisions that we make on the board. Actually, I really like this high school start time debate. Not that I like the uncertainty around it, but I like that it's an opportunity to solve a complicated problem through a high level of engagement. So one of the things that I've noticed over time is in our neighborhoods, when people don't feel like they have a say in an outcome, they're always the angriest at the outcome. And here, I would urge every single person to get involved in filling out this survey, telling their friends about the survey, participating in the forums that we've had. We've had forums about this before, we're gonna have it again. There was a really nice piece of software that we used last time to gather this data. There are an enormous number of complexities involved in this, and I think that scares board members on average, because that means that some percentage that's a lot greater than zero are gonna end up unhappy with whatever decision we make, okay? To me, that's opportunity and not scary, because making a decision under uncertainty where everyone gets their say, they will be able to live with the outcome on average, provided that everyone gets the opportunity to do that. The thing that I take away most importantly from this, though, is Jason's point. This has been on the table a long time. Once we finish this process of gathering the information and analyzing the costs and the bus routes, the direct costs and the indirect costs, I want to make a decision. So we got to get this off the plate once we gather all this information, but I don't want this to take the rest of our lives. It's 4 years. Let's not take another 4 years.
Okay, thank you. We're moving to another question, and Mr. Cousins, we're going to begin with you this time. And the question before you is, do you support parental rights and parental choice when it comes to the social, emotional, and physical well-being of our children?
Yes. Now, I have some more to add to that,
Okay.
but I don't want there to be any ambiguity about where I'm coming from with that. It's not just yes in a vacuum. It's yes with people working together. I might have a very strong opinion and want to come into my son's school building, and announce this is what I think we should do. Now, that might be good for me, that might be good for my son, but of course those interests have to be balanced against the needs of the other students. But I think the magic that happens in parental involvement is that the people who know their children the best are getting to now spend some quality time with people who probably spend the second greatest amount of time with their children, and that's their teachers. Now, if we're working together, we can take the variety of different opinions we're going to have, and whatever the issue of the day may be, what it is today, it's going to be something else tomorrow. It'll change. But by having a process, and when that process is parental involvement, parental engagement, and parental thinking informing the making of decisions, that's where there's an opportunity to have success, where we have children benefiting from our parents and our teachers and the whole educational system here in Syosset working together. Now, I want to punctuate that by noting, coming out of the pandemic, as conditions continue to improve, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to move away from issues that have plainly been divisive. And not necessarily take a victory lap yet, but to take advantage of an improving health situation and increased safety to, again, have parents involved, have them in the building, have them engaged, and have us working together on the issues that we traditionally would be focused on pre-pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Guo?
Could you please repeat the question again?
Absolutely. Do you support parental rights and parental choice when it comes to the social, emotional, and physical well-being of their individual children?
The answer is yes. I fully support parental choice and parental right. And actually, this is one of the main reasons that I'm running for the board. Basically, we are we are living in a time where the state regulations has coming upon us, where our is corroding our parents, our right as parents little by little, and where we as a school board, if elected as a school board, not only have the obligation to obey the law, but also have the obligation to listen to the to respect the parental rights. As such, once elected, I will do my best to give the maximum possible freedom and choice under the law to the parents. At the school level, there should be no additional restrictions unless it is written by the state law or any other law that's written on the paper. So that's my vow to all the residents and parents. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Rico?
Just to be clear, that is a very, very strong yes. I support parental choice, parental rights, 100%. That is one of the one or two main reasons why I'm sitting here today. I don't think there should really ever be a question that the parents get to pick and choose what they feel is best for their own individual children. I think over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of division between people, a lot of judgment, and not a lot of understanding or accepting that people have different reasons, different homes, different backgrounds, different medical situations where they are choosing to do things or not do things based on what they know about their family, their children, that none of us do. And I don't think it's right that people are sitting there in judgment telling us or telling others what they should or shouldn't do with their own children, whether it be vaccines, whether it be masks, whether it be a whole host of other topics that are being pushed to be taught in the school system. I'm married to a woman who was born in the Soviet Union. I've spent my entire adult life with her, listening to her family, listening to my medical school friends who are from the same country. And I think we have slowly started to give up our rights and be shamed into not speaking out and just going along with what we're told to do. And I have a real problem with that. And I love seeing someone like Jason and the other candidates who are standing up here advocating for parents, first and foremost, parental choice. It's up to us to decide what's best for our children, not anybody else. And that's how I'm going to end that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ostrich?
Hi, sure. Could you just repeat the question one more time? I just want to make sure I understand it.
Yeah. Do you support parental rights and parental choice when it comes to the social, emotional, and physical well-being of individual children?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I wanted to hear it again because I'm trying to figure out the person in the room that doesn't support parental rights for the social, emotional, and welfare of their children. The school board and the schools have obligations under the law, and we follow the obligations under the law as best we can. Over and above that, the school and the school board decide the best outcomes potentially through conversation with parents. Has the pendulum swung a little bit too far away from parents? I think there is an argument that we can make that the pendulum has swung a little too far, especially as far as parents among younger children getting back in the building and being able to speak directly without fear of retribution. I think there is a larger fear of retribution in the district than I'm comfortable with, and I'm not entirely sure why, because I know the code of conduct applies to both parents, students, as well as teachers, administrators, and staff. So it's unclear to me why that's the case. But from my point of view, swinging the pendulum back toward parents a little bit further without taking us to a place where every parent can decide everything that a kid can learn in every circumstance at all the time in the schools is probably not what we're aiming for. I think what we're aiming for is following the law. I think we're aiming for balancing the interests of all the stakeholders involved And lastly, to the point, I do think that there are opportunities for engagement that are greater. I feel like your point that there are some fears about people speaking up are too strong. And as a board member, I would really be an advocate to stop or figure out a way that people can come forward more actively, more often, meet with them more frequently in different forums and venues to allow them to express opinions without that fear of retribution.
Thank you. Mr. Rotolo?
So, of course, parents know what's best for their kids. As Vito Corleone told Mr. Salazzo, good luck with all your future endeavors as long as your interests don't conflict with mine. So, of course, you have the right for your children, but there's also the other side of it of what about the community as a whole? So if you want to homeschool your child, that's your right. You can do with that. But if you're bringing your child to a public school, it's not just about your child, it's about the welfare of all of the children. As I said, we have 6,800 children. So our responsibility, our first responsibility under COVID, the pandemic, was to make sure that all of the children were safe. We did not lose one child. Of course, you should have input. Part of the Syosset magic is I came to school here, I went to Village Elementary School, and I got to walk into the classroom, I got to meet the principal, I got to go to family fun night, I got to go to the Halloween party, and of course you need to be involved in a school. Of course you need to be with your teachers and your child and see what's going on. But we have a greater responsibility to all the children. The school board must follow a myriad of agencies, the CDC, the New York State, the ed law, the teachers' contracts. So again, we have to balance all interests to make sure that our children and all of the children are safe.
Thank you. Okay, so that concludes with that question all candidates have answered. And we're going to begin with the next question. And Mr. Guo, I'm going to ask you first. So while we're on the idea of talking about parents, I want to stay there for a moment. And I want to ask a question that was given to us. And I'm going to kind of combine a question here. What are your thoughts regarding introducing gender identity lesson plans for grades K through 4? And do you support parents who choose to opt out of controversial sex education for their children?
Thank you for the question. This is one of the reasons that I come here to running for the Board of Education, Board of Education trustee. The gender identity should not be a topic in the school curriculum. It should be a topic between parents and children. 2-year-old or 1-year-old kids start to know they are male or female. It's that simple. I don't think this could even be a topic. We respect everybody's personal choice as they become older. Let's say a certain age. But for a 5-year-old to 4th grade, that's 9-year-old. The gender identity has not been mature at that time. At that age, for example, if they are 18 years old, you do your thing, I fully respect your right. Not only I respect your right, I hope everybody else, in terms of the school community, everybody respect his right to do his own decision. But as a parent, I support as a parent's right to having this conversation with my child, not in the school. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Rico?
Can you repeat that question one more time?
I can. What are your thoughts regarding gender identity lesson plans and reading assignments for grades K through 4? And do you support parents who choose to opt out of controversial sex education for their children?
Well, I'm glad we're asking the tough questions here. This is a good one. Just to be clear, I absolutely do not support this subject being taught in our public educational environment, especially not in an elementary school level. I accept everybody. I think everybody has the right to pick and choose how they live and how they feel, who they are, and be who they are, and everybody else should accept that as well. But there's a lot of questions to this question. First and foremost, what qualifies our school system or our teachers or whoever that teacher may be to teach that subject? I'm an adult, and I've got to be honest, I am still currently learning about all of the different things that are coming out. This is a very new topic. It's very controversial. Like I said, I accept absolutely everybody, but if you asked me to name every single different part of the LGBTQ community and all the different parts of that, I don't think that I could do that any justice. So I don't think it's the right for the school system to be teaching any of this at any level. I think that's a conversation that should happen between parents and their children. I don't think we should even have I have an 8-year-old in elementary school, and I got to tell you, I'd be appalled if she was coming home asking me questions about all of these different potential genders and how these people feel. It's something that should be taught in the household, and everybody should be accepted, but that's not something that I think should be taught in the schools, not at all. I just want to be clear on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ostrich?
Yeah, so I am definitely not a gender identity expert in terms of my own personal knowledge of whether there are lesson plans or the details of how people decide really complicated issues that are personal. So in terms of whether or not the school should be teaching it, I didn't think it was an option. I didn't think that they were lesson plans that were available in Syosset or that we were doing that. It's hard for me to envision an educational purpose to that at K through 4. It's kind of hard for me to envision an educational purpose around a lesson plan designed to spend time elucidating information from children about these areas. It's bewildering to me that would even be the kind of thing that we would be discussing in terms of asking children to weigh in on their identities during a lesson plan for school. In terms of opting out, parents generally have the opportunity to opt in or out to things that they disagree with morally or ethically or personally. My personal observation is that if there are curriculum-related health programs that have been long tested and studied in terms of understanding about sexuality that's not this related, but it is age appropriate or long-term health, there are plenty of studies that show that there are benefits to health-related topics, but this particular topic, I have to bear ignorance. I have no knowledge of whether or not it's helpful or not. It doesn't make any sense to me what you're talking about. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rotolo?
So, as far as I know, being on the board, I'm not aware, I just want to be clear, I'm not aware that any of this is happening in K through 4 where there's sex education being taught. So I just want to put that out there. I agree that this is something that you need to teach your own child. It needs to be something that you know the maturity of your child. as the other panelists have said, I'm not an expert on this, but that's why we have professionals. That's why we have teachers that mental health professionals. We have counselors. That's why the school has professionals. Now, we could ignore and say, this doesn't exist, and I have no idea, but I'll give you an example, real life example. I was coaching soccer Sunday, and the other team had a transgender child in 4th grade. So now my players and the parents started to say, well, why do they have a boy on the other team? So my answer to them was, let me coach, you guys worry about your kid, and I don't want to hear any criticism, because again, at the school, if you have a learning disability, if you have any other differences, our thing is we want you to feel safe. You're going to be at school, and you're not going to feel threatened in any way. That's what the school is here to do. Now, that's why we have professionals. This is the reason for that. But we can't ignore that things don't exist and say it doesn't exist. If I don't think it, if my opinion is it doesn't exist, then we don't have it. But there's real life situations. There was another situation where I had spoken to a nun who was working with AIDS patients. And the Catholic Church said to her, we can't have you working with AIDS patients. So she said, well, maybe you don't understand what goes on the ground floor. I have to help people. So we can't just ignore problems that are there and say, yeah, we'll deal with it at home. That's not how we operate. We provide an education. New York State provides equal education to everybody. Everybody has the right to get an education in New York State. And our goal here is that everybody feels safe, everybody feels comfortable, nobody feels threatened. That goes for all of us here.
Thank you. Mr. Cousins?
Yeah, I join many of the other candidates that, first, I am not an expert on the psychology or the sociology or the biology, for that matter, of all of the finer points or nuances the case may be, that will separate or distinguish genders, or what's been described to me as the transitioning process. One thing that I know my wife and I we do at home is that we teach our son to not be judgmental and to accept people however they may be, and if to judge them, judge them only if you get to know them. Find out what they're like. Don't just necessarily judge them because of their outward appearance or maybe what someone said about them. Do it from your own experience, because you don't always know what the truth will be until you experience it yourself. So I approach this simply as a parent with no greater skill set than that. For me, K through 4 is too young for subject matter that I think is just simply too sophisticated, even in a community such as ours, where we have a very educated population, to talk about subjects such as that. In speaking with people around the community, I know the issue had been raised to me about curriculum and a variety of things that could be controversial subjects. No one had intimated to me that, and Tom had clarified, that this was something that was either in our curriculum or proposed to be. But to the extent that it ever was, no, I would most definitely have an issue with that at the K through 4 level. Again, I address it as no more than a parent, but for me that's just simply not appropriate.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move into our next question, and beginning with you, Dr. Rico. We've been talking about parents, we're going to move to, I guess, what we consider children's next set of teachers. Parents are the first teachers. We're going to move to the teachers, as you all already mentioned teachers. And this question says, how do you think the teachers of the district should be supported by the board trustees? How do you think the teachers of the district should be supported by the board trustees? And Dr. Rico, I believe we're beginning with you.
Sure. Thank you.
Am I right? Wait. Did I start with you first the last time? Dr. Rico, did you answer first?
I don't. Did we start with you or me?
No.
You might have started. I'm happy to answer whatever's better for you.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Let me just see. I'm right. Okay. Yep, Dr. Rico, let's go with
Let's
you.
just
if
do
you guys,
it.
if it's okay.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think we could all agree that our kids' education is only going to be as good as the teachers that we have working in the district and the leaders that we have supporting them. So as far as our teachers go and how I would support them, I think it's important that we listen to our teachers, that we communicate openly, freely, understand what their concerns are, what their struggles are, what are some of the issues that they deal with from their perspective solely. I think we all understand that first and foremost comes the children, before even our teachers, before us, before everybody. Our kids come first. But as far as supporting the teachers, I think it's important that we listen. We have an open line of communication to hear what their issues may be, and then come together as a group, as a community, as a board, to help support them. Because the better the teachers feel about being supported, the more that they feel that they're heard, just like in any other corporation. I feel like they'll do a better job if they feel like they're being supported, they're being heard, they're being taken into consideration. But we all understand that the teachers are the key to raising our children and to helping them become successful in life. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ostrich?
Thanks. So I have two real thoughts about this. So first, I think the board's number one job for teachers is to provide them a safe, secure, and healthy work environment where they can come to work and do the job to the best of their ability. So anything that we can do to ensure the physical plant, the physical safety, and the emotional support for our teachers is critical to get them to do their best. Look, our teachers, if the last few years have taught us anything, our teachers are incredibly dedicated to our students, okay? We owe them not only our thanks, but we owe them the support that they deserve. The second thought about that is, it's another example of how I wonder if our teachers feel like they can voice concerns up to the board for things that they may see or know that are concerning to them in a way that they are not afraid to be retaliated against. The same way our parents feel sometimes that maybe they can't speak up because something may go amiss if they have concerns that they want to bring to the attention of the school board. When I think about my company, we've got an independent board of directors, not that dissimilar from a school board, where if something is amiss, you are fiduciarily obligated to report it. I don't want to think differently that our teachers, if they see something that's concerning to them, wouldn't feel comfortable coming to us, even if it's in a private or a secure way that they wouldn't feel retaliated against. I would want them to have that opportunity. So that's a way that I'm not sure if it's there right now, maybe Tom can speak to that, but my point is that I would like that option to be available for support for our teachers.
Thank you. Mr. Rotolo?
Yes. So, as you know, Syosset has a very long history of supporting its teachers. As Jack said, this is one of our greatest assets. They put their lives on the line during COVID to educate our children. I saw it firsthand. The teachers went up and above, so we can't thank them enough. The school board supports the teachers. For example, we've just extended the teachers' contracts. To Jack's question, we are in constant contact with the teachers' union. I'm not aware again of retaliation, either for teachers or for people to come and speak out. That's why at our board meetings, we have audience to the public, and we listen to everybody who comes and speaks. We have an email that goes directly to all of our board members. The superintendent gets all of the emails, all of the principals. Everybody is available for feedback. So there's no, as far as I know, you can reach out to any of us and we respond. And we care and we listen to what people have to say. What we also do for our teachers is we support them if they're having a difficult time, if they're having a family situation. The school district is very flexible with the teachers. We also provide a lot of continuing education for the teachers. For example, any of the issues that affect our children, what we continue to do is provide more training, more seminars to get our teachers there. We allow our teachers to take outside classes for them to better themselves and to be able to add more to our students. So 100%, myself, the entire board I could speak for, 100% supports our teachers.
Thank you. Mr. Cousins?
Yeah, being a teacher is very different from just the simple employer-employee relationship, and it's really self-evident just in the nature of the job, because teachers are spending their day educating our children. So for us, as consumers of that service, it's certainly very personal. But I think that the ways that are going to be best to support our teachers are still going to be the traditional methodologies that would work well in any enterprise where you're going to have happy employees. The number one reason that any person, and this is routinely surveyed across the United States, leaves a job is not the money. The money's always a distant number two. It's a crappy boss. So item number one is having managers that are effective. So our administrators should be people who are understanding what their role is, partly as educators and partly as managers. That goes for building principals or assistant principals when we move into the middle schools or the high school, so that the relationship with the staff can be an effective one. But there also needs to be communication where everyone understands their roles. It can be a simple matter of going over what a job description really is, but understanding, teaching maybe in one building may be different from another and at different grade levels. As Tom had touched on, providing for professional development. Employees will not only be happier, but better when they feel that they're getting support to be better at their jobs, to understand what's expected of them, and the kind of benchmarks that can lead to their advancement, to promotion, to perhaps better pay or benefits, and to finding general success and happiness. We stick with those traditional methodologies from the top straight through to the bottom, and the board is in a position as an overseer of the institution, and of course the superintendent's the chief executive, to execute on that. We do that, and we're going to have happy staff. And when we have happy staff, we're going to have kids that get their very best.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to the next question. And Mr. Ostrich, we're going to begin with you.
I think I still haven't had a chance.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Guo.
No problem.
I apologize. Okay,
problem.
sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so the answer to this question is communication. So one of my election slogan will be advocacy without worry. This is one of the examples. So basically, on the regular communication line, there is a circle, parents and then teacher, and go to principal, and go to superintendent, and then go to board of education, and then parents sometimes talking to the board of education trustees directly. But in any way, in any circumstances, the communication line should be always open. And then the person who speak up, as long as it's respectful, it's a fact, it should be respected. It should not worry about retaliation of any sort. So if this communication is broken not because of the worry, that means we still have some job to do to establish a better systematic way to communicate. We can get some more like a email list or forum. So we need to do better job in terms of communication. That's the bottom line of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do see my error in the line of questioning, so I acknowledge that. Thank you all for cooperating with me this evening. But Mr. Ostrich, we're going to move to the next question, and we're going to begin with you, okay? For this one. So school budgets, we're going to go to a finance question now, and here's a question. Do you think the $10 million increase in the school budget next year sound reasonable? sounds reasonable. Do you think the $10 million increase in the school budget for next year, does that sound reasonable?
So, not sure where that number came from and if it's accurate, but regardless, I mean, the school budget is a really interesting and fascinating beast. I've spent the last 5 years on the Citizens Finance Committee, where I sit through all the presentations year in and year out, listening to Dr. Rufo outline all of the significant cost savings and cost adjustments each year. And I have a couple of sort of takeaway thoughts from a big picture on the budget. Number one, if you've spent a reasonable amount of time looking at it, you know that a significant amount of it is fixed and not mutable. So there are savings to be had, but most of those are through future projections or keeping our cost growth down or being smart about some of the discretionary, discretionary and or facilities improvements. So that's some of the important places where we found budget savings. But for me, in order to support our programs, and our programs are extensive and our school academics are excellent, really the part of the budget that we need to be focused on, less than the increases that are mostly baked in through contracts, are on the revenues that we can to offset the taxes. So 10% of the budget is our revenues, and they offset a significant amount. Most of it comes from state aid, but there is a ton of opportunity for us to go and find new revenues. And if we can be more aggressive as a school board in terms of pursuing developers who are overcrowding our schools with extra students, or Amazon, who is building and we didn't get any part of that pilot, or if we can use our 501c3 to develop additional sources of revenue, or even if we can be more persistent with other sources of government, like Jericho just got themselves $100,000 digital, a digital table for, for dissection, because they wouldn't give up on pounding their legislators for extra dollars. If we're willing to take those aggressive stances, then the fixed parts of the budgets that we can't control and the small growth that we're 2% that we're seeing year over year, that won't be as important.
Thank you. Mr. Rotolo?
Okay, so I'm not sure that $10 million number is accurate. You might be referring to total revenue that increased in the budget, but that is not the tax levy increase. I'm not sure where that question comes from, but I'm intimately involved in the numbers. The general fund tax levy only went up by $5 million, which was under the tax cap and has continued to be under the tax cap. So I'm not sure what that $10 million number is. I'm assuming it's revenue. But as Dr. Rufo has presented the budget information, there is a lot of ins and outs that affect our budget. This isn't as straightforward. So there's state aid, there's restricted reserves, there's fund balances, there's many aspects of, in addition to the increase in enrollment. So there's many different facets that affect the school budget. But as I could attest to, and what I've done over the last 3 years, is we've held the line with the budget. We've been able to provide all of the services. We've also been able to fund ourselves. We've reduced our borrowing. Me reviewing the audited financial statements, the internal audited procedures, we have no material weaknesses. So everything the school is doing is to hold the budget line. So again, I don't know where that number is. It's a very complicated number, but I can give you some examples that our pilot has decreased, meaning the money that we get from commercial businesses, because the county decided that the commercial properties are valued less than the residential properties. So your residential tax went up while the commercial tax went down. So there are so many items on the budget that you need financial experts to understand, because this is where there is long-term cost savings. You have to understand the mechanics, the nuts and bolts of our budget, and be able to do long-term financial planning in order to save our taxpayers' money. But in addition, you still have to invest in the school, invest in our facilities, invest in our students, invest in our teachers. So it's very complicated, but again, as a CPA and a CFO, I can tell you that the tax levy only went up $5 million. So I just want to be clear.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Mr. Cousins?
Since Jack and Tom, my running mates, were on the same ticket together, I want to take the opportunity to join and kind of continue their explanation. While the first, Jack's point, that one thing we should be doing is looking for additional sources of revenue. If those sources may exist, well, then, for the sake of discussion, based on the question, a $10 million increase then may seem unreasonable because there was perhaps another way to pay for it. And to a point that Tom was making, and Jack as well, there are a number of items in our budget that present fixed costs that will be subject to increases every year. You know, for example, the cost of things that we routinely have to purchase, or the cost of health insurance and other things. Those items collectively, along with the cost of labor, will be the largest items collectively in our budget. Other things that are programmatic related are those things that we could just say, hey, we're going to cut, but then that's often cutting into things that, you know, can be very popular. It can be extracurricular activities and a variety of academic programs that may be extras. But here's something that we could focus on. There's often talk about fiscal responsibility in general, but something Jack started to allude to, and I want to help finish his explanation, is that rather than just talking about other sources of revenue, but is going out to confront and try to pursue them. At the same time, appreciating what Tom has helped explain to us is that budgets have a lot of moving parts and they're complicated things. Just to pick one thing out of a hat, there is debt that all public agencies in some measure will carry. Money is borrowed to pay for infrastructure improvements, for example. While interest rates are rising, we don't have an easy opportunity, for example, to say, gee, we'd like to go take those bonds and refinance them. They would ultimately wind up being more expensive than they would be today. That brings us to looking, again, for other sources of revenue. The three of us are prepared to pore through those budgets, to use our business acumen to do so, to extract the maximum efficiency from contracts, but also with the political will and the understanding of how other government agencies work, to confront how assessments are done by the county, to ensure that our slice of the pie as residential property owners is no larger than it needs to be. That's a fight that we're ready to undertake on day one. These are things that can potentially be a difference maker, and rather than just discuss them, we're prepared to execute on them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Guo?
I think I know what's this, the $10 million was actually referring to. It was referring to the reserve, school reserve. Just for your information, in case you don't know, the reserve is during Dr. Rupo do the school budget, there will be calculation for the income and then the expense, where the revenue sources, and then all the expense items, and then put some money aside for emergency, so that in case of something urgent, then we have this reserve fund that can come out for emergency use. The $10 million here referring to compare with last year's reserve with this new year school budget. There are $10 million additional reserve compared with last year. So I read through the budget and I know this number is ringing a bell right away to me. So this is the question bring up here is, what is the use for this $10 million reserve, additional reserve? What is the use for it? And do we have to reserve that much? Or is it better to give the $10 million maybe back to the resident, back to the resident for the purpose of lowering tax? Or is it that necessary to keep it so what kind of emergency that we are preparing for? So these are the topics that we should take into consideration. So this is another reason that I'm running for the board is right now on the if we listen to the school budget, we all hear praises. Dr. Rupert did a great job, Dr. Rogers did a great job. But my point is, without critics, the praise is worthless. Because everybody is saying the unified voice of praise, then you might not as well don't say anything because everybody is praising. So I would willing to, may not be come from myself, but I will be collecting the feedbacks from the residents about the budget, and then I will voice up in the board on behalf of that resident to asking questions instead of praise only. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Rico?
Well, I think a lot of the other men up here has really touched on some questions I have. I mean, first and foremost, I know some of these other men have explained it, but I really wasn't sure where that $10 million number actually came from. But having run multiple different companies, I mean, it's really just about sitting down, looking at the top line number in your budget, and then understanding that the majority of this really are fixed. There's going to be a lot of fixed expenses, and then we very simply have to see, what other money is left over and how we can best allocate that. If there's other ways that we can raise funds, I know the board has been setting up a non-for-profit. My only concern with raising outside funds is to make sure that we don't have large corporations coming in and making donations that in some way give them the ability to influence our education or how we operate or what we do as a school system. But I think it's important to look at what the fixed costs are, what the other money is that we have there, and just figure out a way to work within our budget to get the most out of our programs and do the best we can for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this is going to be our last question of the evening before we move into closing arguments. We've had many, and of course, we could not close the evening without coming to the topic of COVID-19. What is your position regarding mask mandates, vaccines for children, and COVID district policies? Mr. Rotolo, we're going to begin with you.
Thank you. So we've just went through this whole pandemic, and it's been a very complicated, very difficult balancing act. As a public school, we are, again, responsible for the health and safety of our children. The school does not have control over vaccinating children. The school does not have control over a mask mandate. The school is funded by the state, therefore, we took a vow to the New York State, if any of the board members will take a vow to the New York State Constitution and the United States Constitution. So that means that we have elected officials in Albany. They dictate what happens. We have to follow those rules or we don't get funding. If there's a situation where there's a child is in jeopardy or something, we can bring that up. We can advocate in Albany. But the school district itself is under the auspices of New York State, and we have to follow those rules. Again, do I want to wear a mask? Absolutely not. Do I want to get vaccinated? No. But again, this is a democracy. People want a democracy, right? This is a community. We have a school board. Everybody needs to get along. So there has to be a set rules that maybe everybody's not going to be happy, but what's the best interest of the community as a whole? So again, on the school board, we have to balance all of these interests. We get mandates from the state, and we have to follow them. It's very difficult for us to say we're not following what, it would be like you being at work and you're saying, I don't care what the boss says, I don't care what the company says, I'm just going to do what I want. It doesn't work like that here. This is a highly regulated institution, and it needs to be that way because our children are at stake. So the safety and health of our children is paramount. And again, our COVID response at Syosset, I dare to say, was one of the best in Nassau County, in Suffolk, that I'm aware of. Now, it's not me saying it. I've heard from many other school districts. I've spoken to many other trustees. Every time I told them what they did, what we did at Syosset, they said, well, we didn't do that at our school.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Mr. Cousins?
Two things that I found to be true in this experience with the pandemic is, first, that my family knew, always knew, what, even as our knowledge on the subject evolves, what was going to be best for our family, and we made our own particular decisions related to who or if any members of the family would be vaccinated, or how many times, or when, or not at all. And the second thing we know to be true is that we're not in a position to judge or really determine what would be right for the family next to us, or across the street, or anywhere else for that matter, because we don't have that same kind of intimate knowledge. Perhaps there's a family member, who may be immune compromised, who might be older. They may be in tremendous health. They may have a medical condition that would prohibit them or exclude them perhaps from receiving a vaccine. The point, though, is that we're not necessarily in the best position to be making these decisions. But there's a third thing, though, that I've learned to be true, which, actually it's a third and a fourth. Third being that we have an opportunity in front of us now as conditions improve to be able to move forward. But it seems that there's always a desire to want to go back and relitigate what we've lived through and what we've passed. And the brilliance of passing it is being able to move on and having learned from it. But the last thing that I've learned is this, that our children had gone through this pandemic. They had not been subject to a directive as to whether or not they should be vaccinated. That decision was left to families, parents, caregivers, and their medical caregivers. And the children are here and they're doing well. The school doors in Syosset had stayed open. Masks today are optional. And that seems to not only have worked, it continues to be working. So I'm hard-pressed to be persuaded that I would want to alter that experience going forward, particularly while things are getting better. But ultimately, I'm not in a position to tell the next person what it is they should or should not be doing. And to the extent that we have the luxury and the opportunity to avoid that, that's precisely what we should do.
Thank you. Mr. Guo?
My answer to this is exactly the precise reason why I'm running for the school board. I want to give in the parents maximum possible choice under the law. So if there is regulation coming from New York State or any source, we will the policy will set forth to fully comply with the law to its full extent. However, on the other side, if there is no black and white written in the law, then on the school side, there should be no additional restriction on top of it. For example, if the school, if the policy or the law says parents or volunteers coming to the school needs to be vaccinated, and then the school policy cannot expand that volunteer definition to anything more than it is necessary. So the other example would be the recent New York State recently passed a law that allows school nurse to give kids a COVID shot with permanent permission, with parents' permission. So my take on this is how can we prevent something happen that without parent consent? So that needs to be something can be done at a school board level, can help. That's my take. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Rico?
Yes, did the question pertain to just masks and COVID vaccines? Or was there a third part to that?
What is your position regarding mask mandates, vaccines for children, and in general, the COVID district policies?
Well, first and foremost, I understand that if there are laws and regulations set forth by the state, that as a district, we have to abide by those. But if the state says that these aren't mandatory, I don't feel there should be any additional restrictions by the school district. I think that, again, comes down to the reason I'm here. I believe in parental choice. There's a lot of people who choose to get vaccinated or not get vaccinated for a lot of different reasons, and I think it's very judgmental to tell other families and other people what they should or shouldn't do without knowing what those families are going through or what their personal experiences have been. As far as masks, again, I'm a doctor, I'm a dentist, I'm the #1 at-risk profession in the world, as per the New York Times, of catching COVID. And I can assure you that almost every mask that I see worn everywhere, they're not N95 masks. And if you really want to get into the research, all those other wet masks that people are wearing, all these cloth masks that our kids are wearing, are essentially completely not effective. So if you're going to make children wear masks or people, they should at least be effective. So I'm against masks. I'm against vaccines as far as them being mandated. I think whether you choose to have your kids wear a mask or not should be up to the parents, and it should be respected by kids either way. Same goes with vaccines. But very clearly, that is not a decision that I feel should be made by the school district. It absolutely should not be forced upon anybody, any family, and there shouldn't be any judgment on that. I accept everybody's choices, and I'd expect everybody else to do the same for each other.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ostrich?
So from my point of view, the good news is that the school district follows state law, and as a school board trustee, that would be my #1 and only priority in terms of the school district creating its own mandates for masks or vaccines or any of those things. That's pretty much outside the purview of what a school district, school board can and should be doing. My expectation is that any of the trustees sitting here or any of the trustees in the boardroom when they're meeting together would first and foremost ask what the law is and then follow the law, and that would pretty much be the end of the discussion. I'm not sure I'm following the mask court litigation that's going on right now with interests around New York State, and as far as I know, masks are optional, and that's where we are and that's where we're going to be. Anything over and above that feels like wild speculation and the kind of thing that you can debate in your own house, but in terms of what we're doing here in the school, we're following the law. So same with giving vaccines, the idea of giving vaccines to kids in the school nurse's office. I mean, I guess that's possible that it's happening somewhere. As a school board trustee, that doesn't, unless we're legally asked to do that, I can't envision a situation where we would be doing that. So I'm a little bit confused about why we're talking about doing things that are outside of the law, and I'd rather spend our time talking about things that we can control. So that's really it for me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for answering and all your responses to the questions. Again, we're sorry we could not get to all of them this evening. Thank you all for your patience. And now, as we're going to move into our closing statements, we realize we're a little over time. But again, thank you so much for your patience and understanding. So we're going to have closing statements. And Mr. Ostrich, we're going to begin with you.
Thanks. So I feel we're really fortunate to have come through this pandemic much better than most, even on Long Island. It's in no small part to the leadership of the existing school board and our outstanding superintendent, Dr. Rogers. Our teachers and staff also showed incredible dedication to our students, for which I'm extremely grateful. Despite our successes, though, there are still some critical things that need to be addressed, and I think we need to do it quickly. Number one, the tax burden on residents is getting out of hand. The cost of an excellent education is certainly not cheap, but I do believe there's more we can do. If we're smarter about our long-term financial planning, if we're more aggressive trying to source additional revenue, there are opportunities. We can get more money to offset our spending from other parts of government, from property developers, and by using our new 501c3 entity. Our children also need our immediate attention because they lost a lot during the pandemic. Serious mental health problems among our youth have increased scarily. and our most vulnerable have been hit the hardest. Many kids fell behind educationally and need our help in academics, and our special ed kids were particularly impacted, and many now have significant social emotional development delays because of it. There are things we can do to help, and help quickly. In light of this, I think it's really important that the school board trustees we elect have a few important attributes. We need to maintain stability in the school board at this time. We can't afford to strike out in any radical new directions with unproven leadership. We need trustees who have extensive and relevant experience that can be brought to bear to address these issues right away. And we need well-versed financial professionals and leaders who are innovative in their thinking and who are comfortable strongly representing our interests. Having people who have been around the school board and understand the district's finances, procedures, and legal obligations, have experience negotiating with other governments to solve problems will make a huge difference. Tom Rotolo, Court Cousins, and I are 3 candidates, and I urge you to vote 1, 2, and 6. Oh, and Karen would kill me. I don't want to forget to thank all of you who put this together, the PTA volunteers, the moderators, the staff. Thank all of you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Rico?
First and foremost, thank you guys again for hosting the event. For all the other candidates that are up here, I think you all have a pretty good understanding of who each of us are at this point. I think you know most of our beliefs and where we stand on most of the major issues. So just to recap briefly, first and foremost, I think we're all as a community focused on our kids' education. We know that that comes first. That's our main priority. But again, all the extracurricular activities, whether they are the arts, athletics, the clubs, music, these are all just as important for our kids to thrive, to become well-rounded human beings. It's important to me that no kids are left behind. I think a lot of our special needs kids really fell behind over these last couple of years, and I want to make sure that coming up into this next fall season, when people start to get the sniffles again and people do potentially start to not feel well, that we don't start taking steps backwards into schools wearing masks again and putting our kids back further behind the 8 ball. I stand very strongly, again, to be clear, with parental choice. I think it's very important that we get our parents, grandparents, volunteers all back into the school system without having to show vaccine cards in order to go to a volunteer event that you're here to support your own children. First and foremost, I stand for our kids' well-being, and I think we do need some change on the board. I think we've been a little bit too far in one direction, and I think it's about time we get some different voices out there who are willing to listen to both sides, and then come together and bring people together toward a common goal, which is the success of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Guo?
Thank you, PTA, for organizing this such a forum. And my vision for this election is maximizing the parental choice under the law, give the maximum freedom possible to the parents without additional restrictions outside of the law. And my second vision, biggest vision, is to advocacy without worry. So establish a communication channel that everybody can speak up without worry about without worry. So, as a first-generation immigrant, I'm here. I'm so happy to have the possibility to serve the community. And our Asian moms has did a great job in the board. Now see what the first Asian dad can do in the board. I'm also a first IT specialist professional in the board in the Syosset history. So once I'm elected, I will bring some IT expertise to the board. One example is I just fixed this malfunction microphone just now on the spot. So I will vow to provide the free microphone fixing on the spot once I'm elected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guo. Mr. Cousins?
Sure. I want to highlight something that Jack had mentioned, which is, the importance of some additional mental health resources for our kids. And there's always going to be a need going forward, but there's certainly an acute need post-pandemic. And that may require an additional expense, but it is a temporary one. It's one that I think that it will be worthwhile. And as well, it's also one that can well be offset with Jack, Tom, and I working together to find not just financial efficiency in our budget and how we do contracting and manage large projects, but again, in confronting other agencies and layers of government to ensure that we get our fair share, that if we want to revisit the improvement, let's say, of our athletic facilities or deal as what was previously proposed with Stillwell, that some of the negative feedback I remember I'd heard, and I'm a sports parent, so I am certainly self-interested in it, was that there was not adequate time for folks to digest it, and that much of the bill was put onto the taxpayers. We can take all the time we need to put together a good plan. The concept itself and the desired result were certainly magnificent, and the result of a lot of hard work of a lot of people volunteering their time. And as far as for the money, the United States Congress has taxes we've already paid. The state capitol in Albany has taxes we've already paid. And we have legislators that represent this district in both houses of both of those institutions of government that we can go to when we want more financial resources for the things that we need. And that doesn't mean just sending a letter. It means pounding on the pavement, getting people activated, having people contact their legislators, and it may be us going out on the road and knocking on the doors and holding press conferences to create political pressure. But it's executing on the ground. That's something that we'll be ready to do on day one. In 1998, when I joined the Syosset Fire Department, I quickly learned a particular mindset and an operational philosophy that I brought with me both to work and other things that I do, which is that we don't want to see any problem as unsolvable. If we work together, we can do it. But it has to be a commitment and a willingness that we're going to do it, and sometimes work with people with whom we disagree, but finding ways to move forward and move the ball down the field. And the three of us are ready to do that again on day one. Thank you all for coming out, and of course, a happy Mother's Day.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rotolo.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all of the candidates here tonight that have put themselves out there and have tried to make Syosset a better place. It's been respectful. It's been a very enjoyable evening. I'd also like a speedy recovery for Lynn. I hope everything is okay with her. These last 3 years have been tumultuous. I feel like I'm battle-tested. We've went through the most difficult times, and I feel like we've come out the other side successfully. There's still a lot of work to do. Now that the pandemic is behind us, this is a complicated organization, and that's the reason why I feel like Jack and Court, with their requisite experience, their professional skill set, being involved in the community for a long time, they're not going to ask where the bathroom is. They're going to hit the ground running. They have ideas. They've put in the time and effort. They also have a proven long-term leadership in the community. To me, this is the best way for you to move our school district forward. Please come on May 17th to vote. This is the best place to live and raise a family. I honestly believe that. I want to wish happy Mother's Day to all the moms, my own mom, my wife, and happy Teacher Appreciation Week to all of our educators. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And again, thank you to our candidates this evening for enlightening all of the community here on your thoughts and your positions. Thank you to Syosset Council of PTAs for having us and holding this forum. Our well wishes are, of course, with Ms. Abramson. Thank you to Ms. Pat Lambert from Nassau Region PTA for coming out, being my timekeeper this evening. I did the best I could. Try to get everybody questions in. And Tuesday, May 17th, don't forget, go out and cast your vote. Thank you. Good evening.